The experience of watching Zom 100 was a unique one in ways that most people watching the show now, without the context in which it aired, might not even really notice. So in this video, instead of trying to sell you on the show or some crazy concept like I might normally do, I'm just going to kind of go through the things about this show that makes the anime in particular so interesting to look back at, and some other stuff I found interesting about it too. Because with Zom 100, a lot of the stuff that makes it so interesting to look at isn't all within the context of the actual story. So I'm going to be jumping around between explaining the story and also the circumstances of its development and release. Zom 100, otherwise known as Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead, or as I knew it, Zombie 100, 100 things I want to do before I become a zombie. Gotta keep those manga naming conventions around somehow, I guess. This anime is based off of the manga written by Haro Aso, who you may also know from Alice in Borderland, with art by Kotaro Takata. It started serialization as a manga back in 2018, and I found it pretty shortly thereafter. For reference, the Aquarium chapter, I believe, was the newest one at the time, which is definitely a good one for leaving a strong first impression. At the time, I was on a bit of a zombie kick for some reason, which with manga can be a really hard itch to scratch sometimes since it's no longer 2009. And this series had my absolute favorite combination of tags in the world: horror, comedy. When this is done well together, it is so unique and fun, and this one definitely nails it. When it's not done well, that's when you end up with garbage like most of the scary movies, or Vampires Suck, or like American Psycho 2. Did you even know there was an American Psycho 2? I didn't. The story follows our main character Akira, who works for a black company. This is a concept in Japan where basically your company works you to the bone regardless of your health or what any laws or regulations have to say about it. I covered this more over in my Mikyu Black Company video, and it's not exactly a foreign concept to a lot of people, so I won't get too into it here. But I think it's important to understand, especially within the context of this show, because a studio that animated this show is Bug Films. Not to be confused with the Bugs Film, a studio who to this point has made exactly one anime, that being, of course, Zom 100. And the only prior experience they have is working in a support capacity with Summertime Rendering and Komi-san Can't Communicate, both of which did have pretty good animation. And you can definitely see the through lines from the style of those shows impacting how Zom 100 came out. And in more than a couple ways, this anime can be seen as the reason why this studio was even birthed into existence. And even without the context of this being a new studio, I think it's important to note that Zom 100 looks pretty good. Plenty of trash tier animation studios out here can never even dream of making a show like this. Early on, I do think they went a little over the top with the colors and the paint effects. I felt like I was in a fucking Jackson Pollock painting or something, which also made me fear that they would tiptoe around the blood and the more gory side of it a bit too much, which they did. But for the most part, both of these would be rectified by a few episodes in, which might get you thinking that it's crazy that a studio on essentially their first shot could have so much success, which is partially correct because in reality, a large portion of the team at Bug Films were formerly employees of OLM, or Oriental Light and Magic, the studio behind the aforementioned 2 anime and a bunch of others without really too many standouts, and are most famously known for the Pokemon anime. OLM, as far as I can tell at least, is not associated with ILM, or Industrial Light and Magic, which is the company behind the CGI for basically every movie ever, from Star Wars to Jurassic Park to the Marvel movies and a whole lot more. And also, U2 at the Sphere! Let's go! It's the Sphere, baby! Woo! And is owned by Disney from when they bought Lucasfilms. But we're getting way into the weeds here. Let's back it up. Because honestly, a studio being formed and creating a great anime on one of their first tries, especially when coming together largely from the pieces of another studio, isn't anything too new or crazy, and happens in other mediums like video games too, but it is still impressive, and it also does give context to some of the other stuff in the story of this show's development. Something important to note is that OLM is famously not very cool, arguably even approaching a black company themselves. Let me tell you what, if you want to make a show as mediocre as the Pokemon anime honestly is for 25 plus years, you're gonna have to abuse your workers. I don't make the rules, that's just how it works. Want to make something kind of fucking trash for way too long, you're gonna have to make your employees miserable. Look at Activision Blizzard with WoW and COD. Same thing, I'm just saying. So when the Chads over at Bug Films finally broke away into their own thing and had the opportunity to make up their own logo for the previously unnamed black company that Akira works for in the anime adaptation, they took their shot and decided to make it a parody of the logo they used to work under back at OLM.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture.
And from all the news we've seen, while there are definitely issues over at Bug Films, which we will get to in a second, they do seem to have a culture that discourages and disallows crunch, which is great to see in the anime landscape where treating your employees like trash is kinda just the norm. We are yet to see, though, how this affects any future projects they might have worked on with OLM, considering their first two were directly in collaboration with them. But regardless, I think most of the anime community agrees that this is amazing to get to see. We will now, halfway into the video about the zombie anime, talk about the zombie part. Wow. And one of my favorite tone setters in storytelling, period. Akira is going through his work day by day, hating his very existence, and then one day wakes up to realize he is late for work, and is totally mortified of the repercussions he'll face back at work for this. He knows the whips are coming out this time. That is until he realizes that during his slumber, the world has fallen to a zombie apocalypse. The world as he knows it is over. People are dying left and right, some before his very eyes. More than likely, the majority of people he has met throughout his life have already died or will shortly thereafter. Everything he knew in the world was coming to an end and would never return to the way it was before. And he has a realization when all of this finally hits him. His boss is probably dead, and even if he wasn't, there's no expectation of him being back to work, and he is free. This elates him, and he breaks away from the wear and tear that his job had put on him, mentally and physically, and eventually returns to the man he was before he was sucked dry by the company. Someone who's carefree and fun-loving and energetic. And I fucking love this so much. When I think about the apocalypse, this is exactly how I like to imagine I would be, enjoying it to the greatest extent that I can, and living my life to the most while I still have a life to live, and with the shackles of the world truly gone. He creates a list of all the things he wants to do to enjoy his time before he dies, starting with telling his former boss to get fucked, which I like to imagine the animators took to heart when they added their legally distinct OLM logo into the show. The rest of the story follows him going through the apocalypse, dealing with different issues both internally and externally, trying to check more things off of the list and discover more things to write into it. But I'm not going to go through everything because not only is that not really the point of this video, but also I don't want to spoil the experience for anyone who hasn't watched through it, which you definitely should as soon as you're done with this video. Not now. Keep watching. It can wait, but do it later. This has all been great so far, but now it's time for the one major stain that will probably linger over this anime and this studio for a while. the production issues. It started pretty early on when only a few episodes in, they announced a very last minute delay of the next episode to the following day. Now, this isn't unheard of. You see production issues pop up every now and then, and it's not too weird for a show to have a week delay or something like that. Often covered up by a mid-season recap, so if you were wondering why we get those fucking abominations so goddamn often, then you'll find there's actually a ton of reasons why they exist. But the main reasons you're going to see these is either because the studio needs extra time to work on later episodes, which will normally mean a planned recap episode, or if there is some sort of issue in the production, which is when you might get a recap episode at a really weird point in the story, or when the recap episode is not announced until it's airing. Since anime is often being worked on during the run of the anime, unlike a lot of Western shows, which are usually series complete before the first episode airs, at least for shows with shorter run lengths. But even then, there can be production issues, and it differs from show to show. So this wasn't too concerning. But then, the next week, there is a 1 week delay on the episode. Okay, not good. And then, on the very next episode, another 1 week delay. And then, the next 3 episodes after this all had their own 24-hour delays, which makes 6 episodes straight with some sort of production error. And by the time we got to episode 9, most of the other 12 or even 13 episode anime, which started alongside Zom 100, had already concluded. And then we got the news. The final 3 episodes will be delayed by almost 3 months and would all be releasing together on Christmas Day. This is basically unheard of. Production issues happen. The Attack on Titan finale famously had some production issues that changed how they decided to release that pretty drastically. But this is different. And now Bug Films does not have any anime it's releasing or working on this season, which again isn't unusual to take a season off, but they also don't have one templated for the next or any upcoming seasons yet, with both their Twitter and the news page on their website being completely silent. Making anime is a famously expensive industry, and if Bug Films isn't able to get it together and get a show out the door soon, with at the very least less issues than with Zom 100, it could spell disaster. This is all to say that despite everything, I believe that Bug Films has got this. They have industry veterans, a good work environment, and currently nothing but hits as far as animation quality. The fans love them. Zom 100 got a lot of great attention, and all the discourse about them, when not talking about the delays, has been very positive. And getting a product out the door on time should hopefully be an issue that's much easier to fix than a low level of quality or a bad work culture might otherwise be. Zom 100 Season 1 is in the books now. The conclusion ended up in a good place with all the comedic timing and animation quality on point. It definitely did not look like the death throes of a company knowing it's on the way out and just not giving a fuck. Hopefully it gets a second season, because I would enjoy it and I think it would do well. Plus, it would be nice to see them get some redemption on the same series that had these issues involved in it. But also, I think there are a lot of great options that this studio would knock out of the park and set them on the right course to be a powerhouse in the animation world in the near future. I think it's also important to realize that while, like I mentioned earlier, this is going to be something that will follow this studio around for a while, eventually it will fade. And when people look back at this anime, they're not going to think about these production issues. They're just going to think about the show and what it ended up as, which is a great anime that I would very easily recommend. The anime came out great, and despite the absolute rage that filled my body every week when these bastards would play with my heart and hit me with another delay, I still don't think I would pick another studio to animate it over Bug Films. Because the energy and life that they filled this show with perfectly reflects the tone of the story and also the amazing cover arts of the manga volumes, which have become so iconic. This is a very different look at anime compared to what we would normally do here, but I think it's an interesting story about a studio fighting its way into the world and a unique one at that. Hopefully I can find a good enough excuse to talk about this story again in the future, because it really does go hard. I still remember going to my boys and telling them about how amazing I found the story, and especially the concept for this when I first discovered it, even though none of my friends read manga, and very few of them even watch anime. It's just that good. And it was able to capture a lot of that same magic that you see in stuff like Zombieland. Or Zombieland Saga as well, for that matter. But for now, I've got a lot of ideas and videos to work on, which isn't the first time I've said that, I know. Even the best of us get a little off track sometimes, and I know none of you have even touched grass since my last video, so I'm not really too concerned about it. You might also realize if you've seen any of my other videos that this one is without a face cam shot. Both of these things can be chopped up to the fact that over the last year, since my previous video, I have moved essentially 6 times, and almost all of them are because of my work at what I like to call my very own black company. But I should be in one place for a little while now, and I finally have all of my recording equipment with me. My current spot is a lot smaller, so I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to be setting up everything, and ideally I'll be able to return to a style similar to how they were before, but my main focus is just getting out content and working on the overall quality. If I can't get the face shots back up until I'm back in a larger space again, then that's fine. You'll just have to deal with missing out on my beautiful face for a little while longer. And as always, literally any feedback on what you liked about the video or how I can make it better is genuinely appreciated. My next video is already in the works and it's going to be great, so make sure you're there when that one comes out. I'm still getting back into it and I'm a little bit rusty, but hopefully you at least learn something. And maybe you look at Zom 100 a little bit different now, but that's all I've got for today. This one is only a warm-up for what I've got coming, so make sure to stick around for more of me talking my ass off about anime and getting way too into it. Peace.